Erika is the founder and CEO of the Toasted Oat, and she is going to have a discussion with John Rivnak from Rev 1.
Okay, I know. This will be easy. We're friends, so thank you. All right. Well, I can tell by how many people are here today that people are excited to hear about Toasted Oat story and hear about you and your background. My name's John Rivnak. I work for Rev 1. I help manage our investment funds here at Rev 1. I've been with the company about 5 years now, and I've had the pleasure of working with Erika Boll for a few of those years. Toasted Oat is a portfolio company of Rev 1 and has a really great story. Erika has a great story, so I'm excited for all of you to have the opportunity to hear it. Is that better? Can everybody hear me okay? All right. We have to hold the microphone close. Before we get started with your story, did you want to plug your new test product in the back?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is this working? Okay, so I would really appreciate it, our whole team would, if at some point during today's event or afterward, if you could visit our little mini booth kind of at the back of the room in the common area. We are trying to get feedback on a new recipe formulation. So we'll get into this later about the highs and lows of consumer products, but we are testing a recipe without butter, which is one of our core ingredients. We are listening to consumers and hearing about a lot of people with dairy intolerance or lactose intolerance or just overall just avoiding dairy. So we have a coconut oil version we're sampling today. You are the first group to try it, so consider yourself part of the beta test. And we're really just trying to get overall feedback. There's a questionnaire back there. If you don't have time or don't wish to fill out the questionnaire here, we have an online survey that we can email to you if you provide your email address. So we have an email sign up as well. So any feedback, as you know, when you're starting a company is gold. So even if it's you don't like it, we want to hear that. So visit back there. So.
Great, thank you. I've tried it. It's really good. And then you have other samples.
We do.
Over here,
Feel free to take. We have like single serve takeaways over on the table here in this room at the back, and welcome you to take those. Take as many as you want. Share them with friends and family. Spread the word. So.
Great. So before we get into the story, I wanted to spend some time talking a little bit about life before Toasted Oat because I think it helps give context for what the process has been like starting a consumer packaged food company and managing that company and growing that company. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and what life was like before Toasted Oat?
Was there life before? So I started my career in public accounting. I'll just go real quick. Knew that was not for me as soon as I got into it. No offense to anybody who is in it, but was just not kind of something I was passionate about. So got out of that and really knew that I needed to do something not only that would exercise that business side of my brain, but also operationally and creatively. So I ended up spending most of my earlier career at Limited Brands and started out in visual merchandising, which is like window displays and all the 3D props you see in store, the stuff that holds the product, that kind of thing. So that's where I started and doing the communication for Bath & Body Works. Over time, kind of bounced around Express, limited stores, Victoria's Secret, and as everybody knows or maybe have heard from friends or family that have worked there, it's a great kind of training ground, really strong management teams wherever you go, a lot of great learning. I kind of learned everything from soup to nuts on kind of procurement of an item to a store, so I think that really serves me today, and I was able to have experience on the financial side as well because of my background, kind of having a dotted line to the CFO of the Limited, just with kind of the reporting I was doing and the budget I was managing for our creative department. So really helpful there, and as you know, like a lot of hours, you hear that probably from people who've worked there. So I think even more so just the pace that company runs at has very much served me today. In fact, my husband the other day goes, "Do you remember when I told you to quit Victoria's Secret?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "That was nothing." So He's like, that just wasn't even close to what you're doing now. So, I think if I had not had that, I think my longevity and my stamina for sure would have died a long time ago. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that seems pretty different than what you're doing now with Toasted Oat. I mean, how did that transition happen? What caused you to want to start the Toasted Oat?
Yeah, I think, interestingly enough, I never viewed myself as an entrepreneur. I never thought I would have my own company. I always saw myself as a corporate person wanting to kind of rise on that ladder. Like I mentioned, I worked at Victoria's Secret, loved my job there. The hours were so intense that I did decide to leave for work-life reasons. We had young kids at home at the time, and I was kind of missing a lot of the key moments. But left there and really kind of had, I was 40 at the time, and had kind of a, wow, now what am I going to do with my life if I can't keep up, this particular pace here, or this maybe isn't a good fit anymore? Where am I going to land? And I allowed myself, quite frankly, a couple months to kind of decompress and look at what was important to me. And I had recently been diagnosed with celiac disease a few years prior to that. And so my dietary restrictions and my diet overall had changed. And so I had started experimenting with a lot of baking. Always loved to bake. My family knows this. My brother's in the room. I won't point him out and embarrass him, but I used to make cookies for his basketball team. And I just love baking and sharing with people. It's always been a passion. And so I thought, I wonder if there's anything that I've been making and sharing with the people at the Limited that could be packaged and shelved and distributed, all across the country. I knew I didn't want a bakery because I knew what hours that entailed. And I knew it would be kind of me doing everything. And so I really did think, okay, what could be packaged? And so this is my grandmother's recipe. And everybody, when I would take it into work, would be like, stop bringing this in. I can't stop eating it. It's addictive. And so I thought, this is interesting. So I can make this gluten-free, all natural. People still love it and think it's like this indulgent treat they can't get enough of. Maybe this is where the idea is. And so I made up some batches, did different fruits and nuts and whatever, put them in Ziploc bags, and mind you, bought all the ingredients at Whole Foods. So, but paid retail for ingredients, made it at home, and went into Whole Foods and said, who buys granola here? And so they grabbed the buyer, and I sat down with him, and I shared the Ziploc bags, and he said, I've been with Whole Foods for 4 years, and this is quite frankly the best stuff I've ever tried. How fast can we have it on shelf? And I was like, I bought the ingredients here. I don't know. And so I didn't know at the time how supportive they are with entrepreneurs, and I was trying to make this good impression. And so I was like, oh yeah, so my packaging prototypes aren't in yet. And my website is under construction, and I just kind of fibbed my way through the end. And I said, I'll circle back with you when I have a little bit more concrete things to show you. And so that's what I did. And over time, he, I think, realized that I hadn't been as far along as I expressed in the first meeting. But where that really helped me long term is they were involved from the very beginning on the ingredients, what the label looked like, how many were in a case pack, what the size of the package, the height of the package, how it looked on shelf with everything else. So I would bring in the prototypes. We'd go walk over to the granola set. We'd look at it together. Oh, maybe it should be a little taller. Okay. We'd go back, make tweaks. So that was in January of 13. I formed the LLC and had that meeting, and we launched on their shelves at the end of July. And so it wasn't a quick process. We started testing in a commercial kitchen in April, and just kind of, this is a funny story. So we start testing at this commercial kitchen, and we have these 4 flavors now: macadamia chunk, cherry streusel, blueberry cobbler, apricot shortbread, and they're pretty much the same when we launch, with the exception of one of the flavor combinations. And so we're testing in the kitchen, and we're testing the macadamia chunk. And we were just dumping trays of product in the trash can. And my husband's helping me. And after 3 days, he looks at me, he goes, why are we using the most expensive one to test? And I'm like, I don't know. We're macadamia, we were paying probably $15 a pound for macadamias. And we're I'm like, the peanut raisin would have been a better option. And he's like, yeah, like what are we? So just learning. But that's how it all started. So that was really the summer of 13 is when we launched on shelves. So.
Gotcha. So we should probably talk a little bit about what the company is, what you sell. I mean, you mentioned some of the flavors, but what is the Toasted Oat, and where do you sell it?
Yeah. So we are essentially a gluten-free granola, soft-baked granola company. Right now, we hope to introduce other products in the future, but we have 4 primary SKUs at this time. A SKU is, an item. I'm speaking grocery language now. We have 4 items that we sell in grocery stores today. Again, all here if you want to try them, but blueberry cobbler, which is blueberry. There's no nuts in that variety. Cherry streusel, which is cherry and almonds, and macadamia chunk has macadamia and white chip, just like you would think of a white chocolate chip cookie. And apricot shortbread is apricot and cashew. And all the varieties are much different than what you would typically find in the cereal aisle or the granola assortment. It's all soft baked, tastes more like the texture of cookie dough than traditional dry granola. So we use it in a lot of different ways in recipes and different usage occasion than typical granola, because you can actually just snack on it out of the bag without milk, yogurt, or whatever. So people love it.
It is delicious. So, I mean, not coming from the consumer packaged food business, how difficult was it to come from your background to, coming up with this recipe, going through this, process of eventually getting it onto the shelf at grocery stores, and now you're at stores nationwide, thousands of stores nationwide. How difficult was it taking your previous experience and translating into what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think in some regards it really helped from a, kind of understanding like pieces and parts that go into like the manufacturing side and like building out like a cost model. That definitely served me into kind of getting it off the ground. Initially, I was, out of the back of my car, driving around Columbus, not only going in and selling and saying, hey, would you be interested in carrying this, in stores like, Hills Market, the Whole Foods, as they opened the 3 different Whole Foods over the course of a couple years. I'm trying to think, Celebrate Local, really just, and then making the deliveries, out of the back of my car, same thing. So that was really the first couple years of the business for sure, is just Columbus. Started selling outside of Columbus into Cleveland after maybe a year and a half. And that was when we took on our first distributor. And I recall that conversation so well. Like the distributor at the time was the president of that distributor, has since been sold. And he said, I tell you what, and there's a lot of layers in wholesale for grocery stores. A lot of people take their percentage as it kind of gets all the way to the shelf, which is what you see. But this distributor said, I tell you what, I believe in this. I'm going to mark it up a penny because you can't afford to sell it to me as low as I need to buy it. And I think you're, I think it'll grow over time. And just when you capture cost savings, if you could pass those on. But it was hard. It starts off really easy. You're kind of selling, not easy, but it's really easy to sell kind of into a local store, because especially now with the local movement, people want to bring local products in, and then you're kind of wearing all the hats at the time. You're making it, you're packaging it, you're putting it in your car, you're delivering it, you're invoicing it, and so there's a lot of pieces and parts, but you kind of know what's happening at all stages. I mean, you're kind of on top of everything, and then as you grow, the tangible aspect of where your product is and what's happening is a lot different. So it's just gets a little bit more complex as you grow.
So what has that process been like for you personally? So coming from corporate world to launching a company, and now, grown that company and had some pretty good success over the last couple of years. What has that process been like, going from corporate world where you have somebody that you're reporting to and you're trying to navigate that corporate life, to really being, your own boss,
Yeah.
and setting the direction for your company and then trying to grow it from there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm on, right? Yeah. there's a lot of things that are so different about kind of, having to not only every day kind of decide what you're going to accomplish or what you're going to tackle, be your own cheerleader. I mean, that's a whole different, losing kind of that team environment where, when things don't go your way, you're like, okay, there's nobody here to make me feel better about that. So I can either cry or I can just figure out how to move forward. So I think you have to you have to make a decision pretty early on. You just get really good at brushing things off. You're just like, okay, I can't, if I focus on that, I'm not gonna be able to move forward. So losing kind of that team environment was definitely a challenge. And I think, but you can find that outside of your own kind of, small group and find people within the industry that you happen to be in, or to find that support because those individuals are going through the same thing as you are. But yeah, I would tell you, work-life balance, it's not as glamorous as people think, having your own business and setting your own schedule. It really almost becomes the opposite. So you feel like you can't turn it off. You feel guilty. You have a lot more guilt about, doing anything personal at all, whether it's on the weekend or at night. You're like, oh, I should be doing this. So I'm not going to go to that family dinner because I need to finish this X, Y, Z. So that's a big shift as well. Whereas I think when you're working for a corporation, you can kind of you can kind of walk out the door in most cases and leave it there.
So apologize to people in the room. I think we're going to have to start talking a little bit louder so that people in the back of the room can hear us. So we might blow some eardrums, but we'll try to be careful. So what experience have you been able to pull on from your previous corporate life that you've been able to apply that's been the most useful in helping to grow the Toasted Oat?
So limited, as I mentioned, people talk about the hours, but really the reason for the hours is their constant pivot mentality. So when you're at the limited, you can think you're going down this path, and then some VP somewhere is going to have an idea, and you're suddenly going this way. So that is exactly how it is to have your own business. You're constantly marching towards an end goal, the same end goal all the time, which I always tell anyone, you kind of got to decide what that is at the beginning, so that can be your guiding star always, because you can kind of get sidetracked really easily. But I think that pivot mentality that happened a lot in my early career, and kind of having to put aside what I may have thought was happening or my schedule at the time and work an overnight, there were times where I spent the night at the limited and went home, showered, and came back. And so that type of stuff where it's like, okay, we just got to figure it out and get it done. And that definitely has probably served me the best for this. Absolutely.
Just hustle.
Hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the company's had a lot of success over the last couple of years. You've grown a ton. You've even grown a lot since Rev 1 first invested in the company. But there's always bumps in the road for startups. Can you talk a little bit about what challenges you've had specific to Toasted Oat?
Yeah, so just to give everybody a little bit of framework, we, like I said, launched in early 13, mid 13 on store shelves, and stayed in just a handful of stores for the first couple years. Started expanding regionally in 2015 or 16. So started taking our product, to some regional retailers like Whole Foods and some others. I don't know if anyone's from the East Coast, but like King's and Balducci's, and started using another distributor for that business. And interestingly enough, so the financing is one thing that I really didn't think I was ever going to have to do. So that was one big kind of roadblock for me early on, is realizing, wow, I'm not going to be able to personally fund this. We would keep doing projections and think, oh, we're going to be fine. Once we grow, then that means more revenue, and that revenue will fund any marketing we need to do. But the business was much more expensive than I thought it would be to scale. So, at the time, in Central Ohio, it was really hard to find people in the consumer product space that, were interested in food, that wanted to hear about it, that wanted to invest in it, that thought, there could be a big exit, and so I think I, early on didn't know how difficult it would be and how long it would take me to, finance the kind of the growth phases of the company. And then as we've grown, at the end of 2017, we were in roughly 350 stores, and we're in around 3,000 today. So in the course of a year and a half, we've kind of grown 10x, and there's a lot of pain points with that as well, not just from, scaling your product and the distribution side of it, but hey, are we going to make too much or too little, and how much inventory are we going to be sitting on, and are we going to run out? And I've had stressful situations where I'm calling my co-manufacturer, and can you double that run? Oh my gosh, I just got all these POs I wasn't expecting. And then the flip side can happen too, where it doesn't move as fast as you think it will. You can use your best effort to put a projection in place, and then it seems it goes quiet for a while, and you're like, what's going on? And so I think those highs and lows of the selling cycle too is something I'm getting used to. And there's challenges in retail, specific to grocery retail, where you could be on shelf, and I'll use this example story of ours. We were, like I said, selling in the Mid-Atlantic region of Whole Foods, and this was so exciting. I mean, I'd worked a couple years. This is in 2015. We were accepted by our grocery buyer at the time, and launched on the shelf, and thought it was just going to be like the end-all be-all. And I didn't know that, okay, you got to put marketing dollars behind it. You got to put your item on sale a few times, a quarter. And the sales outside of Ohio just did not meet, where we should be. And they discontinued us. So we were on shelf in the Mid-Atlantic region of Whole Foods for a year, and the buyer came to me, and we at the time had kind of realized, our packaging isn't really working that well for us. We were in fact, I bought, hey, Joelle, can you hear me? In the bin that I brought today, I brought the old packaging to show you guys, because I think it's really important. Like, sometimes your first going out into the market strategy is just not right. And, what worked for us locally here did not work as we started expanding outside of Ohio. And so here we launched in Whole Foods. This is Joelle, my marketing genius. So in this package here. So, we're launching a chewy granola product in a hard container with no window. So we're like screaming from shelf, hey, we're different, we're soft, we're chewy. Oh, you can't feel it or see it, but trust me, like, buy it. So we knew kind of within 6-8 months of being on shelf in Whole Foods, we're very fortunate. Whole Foods allows you to see kind of what you're moving in every store. So we could see, wow, it's just not moving in the stores that are outside of Ohio, what's going on. And so it was pretty clear, while people know about it in Ohio and they know what's inside this can just because of brand awareness, people in, Massachusetts don't know that it's soft and chewy. So we went through a rebrand, and we started it in 2016, kind of after, literally right at the exact same time where she was like, this isn't working. And I said, well, I'm working on this new packaging. I know it's not working. And she's like, I'm sorry, you don't have a prototype. I can't do this based on faith. And, doesn't mean it's forever, but, for now we gotta, remove the item. Devastating. And I'll tell you, right after I took venture capital for the first time. So had sold this story, hey, we're selling in this region of Whole Foods, this is, great. And had to go back and say, hey, guess what? I know you just put money in the company, this just happened, really deflating. And interestingly enough, fast forward about a year and a half, and I get a phone call from Austin, Texas. And my dad can vouch because he was in the room at the time. And I'm like, this can't be Whole Foods. But I was thinking that in my head. I'm like, oh, this could be the Whole Foods corporate office. And I pick up the phone, and she's like, hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm the grocery buyer for Whole Foods Global. And I got to tell you, I just stumbled on your product in our office. What the heck? She's like, what is this stuff? She's like, can I take you global overnight? And I'm like, tell me your story, tell me where you're selling, and at the time we were just in the 3 stores in Columbus, and our movement was very strong, so she could see that. And she's like, tell me what happened. It looks like you used to sell in the region. And so I tell her all this, and she's like, okay, well, keep me posted with the packaging and your manufacturing capabilities, and let's meet when we're all, when you're all, up to speed and ready to talk. And so we did, and we scaled up our manufacturing. We, at that time, would just launch the new package. And sure enough, got invited to, Whole Foods National and presented and were accepted. So went from 3 stores to 450 stores overnight. And when I later spoke with the Whole Foods global team at a trade show, we were just having like a touch base. And I said, it was devastating. I'd say the only time I've cried, honestly, with this business is like when Whole Foods when that happened. And she said to me, well, it happens all the time. She said, I can't tell you how many brands are top sellers now that have been kicked out of a region, multiple regions, global. She said, the difference is you came back. And that was like, that hit me like, I said, are you serious? And she said, yeah, most people, that they quit. And they say, and it devastates them to the fact, and I said, well, that's so funny because it was the most devastating thing to me that it made me want to quit, especially after I had just taken venture capital. And I thought, what am I doing? And so that really has helped as things have gone on that, hey, everything, kind of is, everyone's human. Things happen. You're going to get knocked down. Are you going to get back up? And so, like I said, kind of the resilience and like the just knowing this is what I want my end goal to be, and just every day taking steps towards it, I think is the only way to kind of survive.
Yeah, that's great feedback. So you made a good point too that, you've received investor money and you've had to go to them and, you have to give them updates on how the business is doing, and sometimes you don't have the greatest news giving them those updates. What has been your approach to helping to maintain that support from those investors and from those partners when you're going through the tough times? It's easy to do it when things are great and you're expanding and sales are growing, but sometimes you've just got bad news to report. So what is your approach to helping to maintain that support? Because that's one of the things that you've, I think, been really good at is, maintaining partnerships and relationships with investors from the very beginning, and they're still with you today. So what has that been like?
So for me, like, I've just never been good at like keeping secrets or lying. So, and I really am so grateful that people believe in me or believe in the product. I still have moments sometimes where I'm like, really? You want to give me that? Like, it just kind of baffles me. So that's really what guides being informative to them, because I feel like they deserve it. They gave me the money. They deserve to know what's going on with the money. And then usually if something really bad happens, what I really like to do is not like pick up the phone that moment and say, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe, this happened. I want to keep you in the loop. Is go through the process of like understanding what happened, why it happened, what I can do to make it better, and then going and saying, this is what happened, this is what I'm seeing or why I think it happened, and hey, either I need to talk to these people to figure out more, or I've kind of figured out I want to do this, this, and this to fix it, or hey, this might just be bad news in general. What else can we do to counterbalance it? But early on, with some early investment we got from a venture capital that is focused on food and beverage, we went through what was called like a boot camp. So it's kind of like a traditional accelerator model. And one of our days we spent on investor relationships. And so we had our peers who were just a little further along than us and had been with this venture capital for longer than we had. get up and show us their investor presentations and their quarterly reports. And so they basically, one of the guys who got up and spoke said, hey, this is how I present my information every quarter. I bucket it by topic, so sales, operations, finance. And he's like, and then I rebucket it, and I do successes, challenges, and kind of future focus. And I thought that's brilliant because number one, it forces, what I love about it is it's a good exercise for me, especially the future focus, is looking at that all the next quarter and making sure I'm, okay, am I still tracking to what I said I was going to do? But it kind of lays it out really simply for them. Hey, this is what I've really struggled with this quarter. This is, what's been great and I'm proud of. And then this is stuff that whether it's coming from one of those two buckets or something totally different, what we're going to focus on next quarter. And that allows them, in some cases, they can help. So it allows them to offer even more than just money. And I think, too, it just makes everything smoother. Everyone knows what's going on. They don't feel like you're trying to hide anything. My goal is that these people will be with me as long as they can or as long as the funds will allow. And I want them to believe in me and my commitment. And so I just feel like that's a good way to keep that relationship strong.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. We as investors want to continue supporting you, and we want to understand the challenges that you're having so that we can help you through those challenges. So being as forthright as you possibly can and communicative as you possibly can, I think is extremely important. So let's wrap up on good news, and then we can get into questions from the audience. What are you most proud of so far, and what are you most looking forward to over the next 12 to 18 months?
I'm proud I'm still doing it. I know that sounds like kind of generic, but I have been beat down so many times, you guys, you'd be like, holy moly, I can't believe you got back up. It has not been easy. It is as rewarding as it is hard. I can't believe that people still put it on their grocery list and buy it. That still baffles me. But I'm like, well, we shipped 75,000 units last month, so I guess people are buying it. Wow, that's a lot of people. So I'm really proud of that it's on shelves and that it's my grandma's recipe and that my family's been behind me the whole time. And I look back and just look at the journey, and it's just kind of remarkable. And then coming up, I'm excited about the coconut oil, really excited about that. There's so many great things about it, I think, so looking forward to your feedback. We're launching in Kroger nationally in January. So although it's super exciting, we're not sure the final store count yet, but we do know it'll be across the country to some degree. And, with that comes, stress to stay there, right? So that's kind of a little bit of excitement and a little bit of fear mixed in. But I'm just excited that I get to keep doing this every day. So,
well, we're excited to continue working with you.
Yeah.
So do we have time for a few questions? Okay.
Who's got some questions? Yeah, Ann. How did you become introduced to Rev 1?
I think my father suggested me coming down here and beating down the store early on. He came from the technology industry and startups and knew that they were kind of the deal in Columbus as far as the biggest funding opportunity. So I think I came down and bugged that. I beat them down. They're like, yeah, we don't invest in food. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll just keep coming back. That's fine. So I always say I love being able to hand out what we sell. But yeah, that was my father, and that was probably as early as early 15. So. Oh, thanks. Hi. Hi.
Can you talk?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah. So she asked, tell me about your team and how that has evolved. Who's on your team now, and if that's kind of been a steady growth or kind of a little all over the place, which as a startup, is par for the course. So I, backing up a little bit on how our company was structured early on, we used to bake our product ourselves. So I used to have a kitchen. I used to manage like a kitchen staff. But as far as like the overall operations and finance, all that of the company, that was on me until about a year and a half ago. So summer of 18, my first hire was kind of a staff accountant, and so that kind of relieved me of the day-to-day financial reporting aspect of the business. And then about 8 months after that, we hired an internal marketing manager, and they're both here today. And that was social and digital. I was at the time using a lot of consultants for social and digital marketing and our e-commerce, and she's handling all that, wearing a lot of hats. And in early 18, I should say, we hired a sales consultancy that is a shared service amongst other CPG emerging brands. So we share about 24 national sales reps that are selling into the grocery stores on our behalf and acting as if they're a Toasted Oat sales, VP of sales essentially. So that's outsourced, so our team right now is really that sales team. And then we've got internally full-time marketing and an accounting, and then we have a part-time CFO. So that's kind of how we've been running the show, to date. So it's different to go from doing it all yourself. I'd say that's kind of a challenge, to letting things go, and knowing that you hire people because they're smart, and in a lot of cases they know way more than I do. So we do have a board of directors. Yes, that was instituted with our Series Seed financing last year. So.
Peggy Tidwell, Park National Bank. Love your story. Sounds lonely, starting a business. Do you have a mentor or someone that is your confidant as you get the business to the next level?
Yeah, it is lonely. And you don't always want to be the person complaining about your life to people. So, but honestly, my father has been my main go-to, and he is just retiring now, but he was our CFO until this month. Because he's been acting as CFO, he understands every single thing that's going on all the time, and he's my dad, so I could not have done it without him. And then, like I was saying earlier, I really have kind of these friends in the industry that are in the CPG space that are in the same boat I am. So that's more like the snarky conversations that go on, like, can you believe blah, blah, blah? Like, what? Okay, thanks for letting me vent, bye. And text message or calls. So that also is, between those two, kind of having the other founders that you can really even just spitball ideas with, and they know what you're talking about and how to direct you, because everybody's kind of at a different stage. But like true emotional support, of course my husband too, but yeah, my dad, my family, yeah.
Erika, you've accomplished quite a lot. You mentioned that you got a venture capital firm to invest in your business first, and I'm a member of the Rev1 Investments team as well. That was very attractive to us, in addition to your product and your tenaciousness, as you described it earlier. How did you find said VC firm? That might be instructive to other food entrepreneurs here in the room.
Well, you're gonna laugh. So that was Tom Kelly back there, my dad. We kind of came up empty-handed coming to Rev1. Like I said, like they just wouldn't bite early on, and we're like, okay, now what? So my dad started Googling, and I started Googling, and I just started asking people. And we found, so our first venture capital came from Excel Foods. They're based in New York. We discovered them on a Google search and applied through like their online application. No lie. And then sent samples, and I followed up on email, and they said, oh yeah, we tried the product, we really liked it, and then that was kind of it. I didn't really get a lot after that. And so then I thought, okay, there was an event going on in the food industry in New York, like around the same time. And I'm telling you guys, I was running out of cash. Like, I had no cash. I was like, I got to get this done quick. And so they were based in New York. I noticed they were sponsoring this event. So I said, hey, I noticed you're sponsoring this event. I'm coming in town, to attend. Would you have time to meet before, like the day before or whatever? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. Because I think they thought, oh, that's no skin off our back. She's coming anyway, it's not. So they said, yeah, and I was like, okay, I'm booking the event and the plane ticket. So I hadn't booked the event or the plane ticket, but that did work. So, and that's how we got it. So, yeah. Resourcefulness, yeah, I would say.
Resourcefulness and tenaciousness. It goes a long way. One more question?
Yeah, do we have one last question? Oh,
Yep.
I was just over there.
Okay.
Can you talk about kind of your different stages of expansion and kind of as you go from a local company to regional to national, kind of what your biggest challenges were, and then maybe what, say, after launching with Whole Foods Global, what did you learn about that process that might help you with Kroger?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest challenge is the difference in dynamic of kind of being a local brand and having, as you know, this community in Columbus, you can see it from Rev 1 even, is so supportive of local. And so when you're demoing in a store, you see people demoing in a store, and you're more apt to go up to them if they're like, hey, I'm from Columbus, this is my grandma's, product, granola, do you want to try it? And, so you're really building that one-on-one relationship with people, both at the store level and consumers a lot of time, because your friends of friends, help you spread the word. And when you overnight go into, that many more stores that are, not to whatever, but are like in a random town in New Mexico, right? That I don't know anybody, and you realize, wow, that community and that awareness is not around that store, and those customers are just going to walk in and buy what they normally buy, unless they're directed to do otherwise. So, one thing, we did, and we've seen, things that have worked and things that haven't worked with our experience, only being in Whole Foods and some of the other national retailers for a year, perfect example, what worked here in Columbus, we would do demos and have that one-on-one kind of connection with customers and really sell a lot of product. And so we said, okay, that's what we're going to do everywhere. When we launch nationally with these retailers, we're going to set aside a budget to do, these in-store demos everywhere so that we create that connection and people can try it. And it does work on that day, but that community build afterward really does not happen. So, yeah, they tried it, they liked it, they bought it. You'll see your sales increase in that month. But that intangible kind of sales, like the gold of sales, right? Like the word of mouth and the community behind it doesn't happen. So, now we're kind of looking at a different strategy for next year, because we've been on shelves for a year. We've tried promotion, we've tried in-store demonstration, tried different events that retailers offer, and we've realized, you're going after the regular customer, and the regular customer buys things when they're on promotion. And that's what piques their attention, is that shelf tag, or if it either says new or on sale or whatever, that's there all the time. That's there 24/7, anytime they walk up and down the aisle, not just in that short amount of time that you have somebody standing in the store. So I think for us, we're constantly looking at where and why we've been successful and where we've been successful, and like how to apply it. But sometimes even that doesn't translate. And so like I said, you just have to you need to always have eyes wide open. I think I've learned, and not assume that everything's hunky-dory until you hear something. You kind of have to go after the bad stuff, like go find it, because if you don't go find it, it'll come find you. And so that's kind of been our focus as we've grown into bigger retail. And as we look at Kroger, I'm 100% certain we should not be demoing in their stores in California or Colorado. We should be going, okay, how can we be the most aggressive on our promotion and the most frequent and hit those customers as often as we can. And then maybe want to sprinkle in some, something with their store teams. Is it, do we send a small box to a select group of stores and get the store teams behind the product? But yeah, constant learning. And it's not like you just sell it, and when you have an e-commerce business, you can just kind of keep building. It's like the dynamics of in-store retail is so different kind of everywhere you go, and it varies by natural retailers and convention, what they call conventional retailers, so your Krogers and your Giant Eagles. So I think always being open to things not working and being able to admit that it's not working, and just doing the best you can to apply new strategy constantly.
Well, Erika, thank you so much for being here today. You have an amazing story, so thank you for coming and telling everybody your story. Round of applause.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.